Welcome back to, I believe, episode 8 of Cinderella Phenomenon. We're about to learn a little bit of dancing with Rod. Also, it's kind of late, so I'm going to try to keep my voice down. I do have neighbors, so excuse the whisper episode, I guess. Why did you follow me? I shrug. I wanted to see you practice. To be honest, I want to see him dance. I already know that Emerlane is very clumsy when it comes to dancing, but outside of the one practice with Emerlane, I never seen Rod dance. Emerlane always gloats on his behalf, but I have yet to witness Rod's supposed talent with my own eyes. Our dance together was so short, I barely had any time to judge him. I do not practice with an audience. Why? It is my preference.
Rod is easily embarrassed.
Rod groans and pinches one of Sebby's cheeks, glowering.
Sorry.
Rod reluctantly releases the bunny with a sigh. I notice you've been talking more lately, Sebby.
Oh, that's because Rod here has been saying things that contradict what he thinks or feels.
Sebby makes a sound of defeat as Rod once again pinches one of his cheeks. Rod stares at me with wide eyes, and I stare back, beginning to panic. What's wrong? You smiled again. I put a hand in my mouth, flushing. I was smiling again? I never even noticed.
It was a really pretty smile, Princess, right, Rod?
Rod quickly turns away, cheeks slightly pink.
I need to practice now, so I would appreciate you leaving.
He did not even command me to leave. What a surprise. Emerlane said you were a really good dancer. I want to see it with my own eyes.
Why, so you could judge me?
I'm not here to judge you. I am sure that I'm a better dancer than you. Fuck, I'm sure I'm a better dancer than you. The scowl on Rod's face deepens. I almost smirk. Maybe he is reluctant to show me, but Rod is also full of pride. He's more likely to show me if I pose a challenge.
You didn't even answer the question. And are you underestimating my dancing?
The others may have forgotten, but you still remember, do you not? I am a princess and was taught by the kingdom's best instructor. I say the words with pride, and I notice Rod's lips twitch in response. It actually makes me feel accomplished to get under Rod's skin. Get out of here. Sorry, thing popped up. Accomplished to get under Rod's skin when he is usually the one getting under mine.
Having the best instructor does not automatically make you the best dancer. I am pretty confident with my own skills.
Say what you want, but I will refuse to believe you without any proof. I still say that I'm a better dancer than you are. Rod steps forward and pulls me suddenly into his arms, taking me by surprise. He looks at me, clearly determined.
Fine then, you'll have your proof. I'll make you swallow those words with this dance.
We shall see. Rod starts leading the dance. He glides us into the imaginary rhythm of a waltz. Even without the music, I'm able to count the steps in my head as I follow his lead. This is different from that short dance we showed Emerlane. Rod's movements are graceful, his touch gentle as he leads me into an underarm twirl. Aww. Dang it, we're romancing the stepbrother. I knew it was going to happen the moment it said Rod Root, but... Because if you think about it, in another world, these could have been my real siblings. So, this is really awkward for me. Dear sweet Rod. When I come to face him once again, I notice the gentle way he stares at me. The usual hardness of his expression is gone, melted into something relaxed. I find myself staring back at him, looking into his eyes. Perhaps Rod does have some gentleness to him. Our gaze does not break as he twirls me. You have beautiful eyes. Rod's eyes widen as soon as mine do. He abruptly lets go of my hands and steps back. I can only stare at him, my face warm.
It wasn't me this time. That was more than just a thought, I swear.
Rod says nothing, though his cheeks continue to darken with embarrassment. Oh my! Rod and I turn to look at Emerlane, who's hovering by the door.
Excuse me.
Rod quickly walks through the doorway out into the hallway, leaving Emily and I alone in the room. What just happened?
That was a wonderful dance, Gaia.
You were watching?
I only just saw the last few seconds, but you know, the two of you really did look good like a couple. It was sweet.
A couple?
Oh, you're blushing.
I put a hand to my cheek and turn away with a scowl. I am not. Besides, whatever just happened was embarrassing.
But do you like Rod?
Ooh, what was happening? I stare at her. I do not. Also, are you forgetting that I'm a maid who could not be with the prince even if I wanted to? Honey, you're talking to the girl whose mom was a commoner that married the king. Honey, Gaia, think for a second. He's grumpy and cold. And even though we are not blood related, he's still my stepbrother. Big points here. Big points here. If only Emerlane realized how crazy her words were in light of the truth. Emerlane suddenly looks starry-eyed as she giggles at me.
Love knows no boundaries, dear Gaia. Besides, he seems to like you.
Your brother hates me.
Rod. He can be a contradiction sometimes. Sometimes he says the opposite of what he feels. It's only when you get to know him as well as I do that you realize what his truths are.
I cannot help but think of Sebi, who always speaks Rod's thoughts aloud when they're contributing.
He was always so mean to Viorica when we were young. He would always bully her for being a crybaby, even though he cried far more often. But then I realized that he treated her more special than he did anyone else. Back then, I knew that he liked her. I thought that one day the two of them might even grow to love each other, but...
Emerlane lets out a long sigh. She directs her attention out the window.
His attitude towards her has changed ever since he was cursed. Then they grew even more distant when Viorica found a lover.
Is that the reason why you have been going to the toy shop with Prince Rod? Because you want to bring them back together? Emerlane nods.
The three of us were best friends. The Three Musketeers. It's not the same without Rod. I keep on asking him what's wrong, but he refuses to tell me. He's always been stubborn, but it's not like him to keep secrets. It's really frustrating because I have no idea what I should do to help him.
I thought he was just being stubborn with me, but apparently no amount of prodding, even from his own family, will make him budge. Why is he being so difficult? What if it's part of his curse where he can't tell you? I hope you don't mind me asking, but what do you know about his curse? Emerlane stares at me for a few moments before nodding.
You're my friend, Gaia, and I know that I can confide in you.
I know that sometimes I'm not trusting enough, but I think Emerlane is still far too trusting.
We only know that he has the mermaid's curse. I've read the story so many times, hoping that I can figure out some way to break his curse.
I think back and realize that I had actually read the beginning of The Little Mermaid a long time ago, but I did not have the chance to finish it because I was caught by Mother. Little Mermaid is about a mermaid who trades her voice for legs, right?
Yes, she does it so she can be with her prince. Rod's voice was taken away, but I'm sure that he was given something in exchange. I've heard that the curses are derived from the original tales, but that they are twisted in some way to fit the format of a curse.
And not slowly, thoughtful. I have a strong feeling that Rod's curse is related to Viorica, but I cannot draw the connection. But still, Viorica might be the key to understanding his curse. If Rod will not divulge anything, the next best chance we have of understanding his curse might be going through Viorica. Ba-da-da, Chapter 7.
Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for.
Today is the first time that I'm leaving the palace on a day off. Usually I choose to stay inside, whereas the other servants always leave to go home. I never see any reason to leave since this has always been my home. And the Martian has never been home. Besides, it's not as if I want to return. Not after that conversation we all shared last time. Thus, I have spent most of my days asking questions about Mother's reign, inquiring when and where I can. The opinions do not surprise me.
I was so scared of her. One wrong move and she'd have you thrown in prison. The townsfolk would always wait for her to pass by before leaving their houses. She was a tyrant. The kingdom is a better place now that she's gone.
There's no reason for them to lie to me. The more I hear, the more my old life makes sense to me. I now know why the king never seemed to love Mother and why the people hated her. And the reason the people looked at me with such fear. However, it's been months since I've been glared at in public. If there's one good thing that this curse did for me, it is that it allows me to travel around town without being noticed. As Viorica's shop comes into view, my thoughts shift to the reason I have left the palace in the first place. If Rod will not tell me anything, I will have to ask Viorica. She must be related in some way to this curse. I pause outside the door to the toy shop with a deep breath. I push the door open. Welcome. The moment she sees me, her expression becomes confused.
Oh, you're the princess's maid, Gaia, wasn't it?
I nodded her.
You've never come in here alone before. What can I help you with?
I wanted to ask you something. It's about Prince Rod.
Prince Rod? Did something happen to him? Is he okay?
He's fine. She sighs with relief.
Then what is it you would like to ask?
I just wanted to know if you knew anything about Prince Rod's sudden muteness. Viorica stares at me for a few moments before she shakes her head.
I only know that it happened soon after I met my fiancé, Decimond. What reason do you have for asking?
Well, I try to think of a plausible explanation for this, and I immediately consider Emerlane. Viorica is Emerlane's best friend. Surely she'd be willing to help if she knew I was doing this for Emerlane. Prince Rod has been very quiet lately. Princess Emerlane has been worried sick about him, but he refuses to say anything, even to her. I've been trying to gather information that might be helpful in discerning the cause. I stare at her expectantly, hoping that my gaze holds nothing but determination. Finally, Viorica smiles.
Oh, she's lucky to have a dedicated friend like you.
I'm still not accustomed to the fact that Emerlane considers me a friend.
Before she became the princess, I was her first confidant. We were like sisters. But now that she's living in the castle, we no longer have the luxury of spending so much time together. I worry about her constantly. Even around me, Em always tended to keep her problems to herself at first. She doesn't like to bother other people with them.
It is hard not to agree. With the way Emerlane was always smiling before, I never thought she had any problems in her life. It was only recently that I discovered that she was hiding all her loneliness and pain behind a smile.
It's a relief that she's befriended someone who cares so much about her.
I don't know if I can be much help, but I'll tell you what I know if it will help Emerlane. To start with, I'm not exactly sure how everything changed, but it all happened so suddenly. All I know is that after the night I met Decimond, our relationship changed. At first he still smiled, but recently he's been avoiding me. What happened between the two of you the night you met your fiancé? Nothing. Rod and I did not meet on that day. Prince Rod wasn't there? No, but soon after what happened that night, Rod grew distant. What happened? It was a stormy night and I was heading back home. I took the route by the riverbank because it was the shortest route. It was foolish of me. The road was slippery and full of mud. I lost my footing and fell into the water. The waves were strong, and I was certain I was going to drown. I don't remember what happened in the darkness of that water, only that when I woke up my head was in Decimond's lap. That was the first time we met, but not the last. He carried me home, and he came by every day as I was recovering, and then he came to visit even after I had recovered. I tried not to get my hopes up too much, because what could this nobleman see in me, a mere commoner? But I still ended up falling in love with him. You have no idea how happy I was when he said he loved me too. It was a dream come true.
Of course, every girl's dream of marrying a prince. It was in all the fairy tales that I read as a child. None of that was at all related to Rod. How does this relate to his curse? You said your relationship with Prince Rod changed after that night. What happened? Viorica sighs. I told Em and Rod about Decimond soon after the incident. Em was happy that the two of us had fallen in love, but Rod didn't say much of anything. That's when I noticed he started growing distant, and when I realized that he had also lost his voice. He still won't tell me anything, but I figured that he was... Her voice fades, but I know that she's referring to the curse. So Rod lost his voice shortly after Viorica met Decimond. The mermaid's curse must have something to do with the tale. The little mermaid traded her voice for legs so that she could be with her prince, but that night, the only person who found their Prince Charming was Viorica. Rod's curse must have something to do with Decimond and Viorica. He became distant with her after finding out about Decimond. Why? Then there's the fact that he still spoke to Viorica, even if he was distant. It was only when he found out about their wedding that he became so cold. I frown as I try to organize my thoughts. How did it get to be this late? I'm so sorry, Gaia, but I have to close the shop now. Sorry for the story. I know it has nothing to do with Rod, but it was after that incident that he began to act strangely. I don't think there was much help, but I shake my head. You've told me what you could. Viorica walks me to the door, opening it so that the both of us can step outside into the street together. I really hope that you're able to help Emmeline and Rod. I hope so too. No, did you see Ophelia the other day? I catch sight of two noblemen sitting on a bench together, not too far away from the toy shop. They're referring to Ophelia without her title. How disrespectful. Who would have thought a peasant like her could also look like royalty? But her dress. As the queen, she ought to be wearing silks rather than satin. Ugh. I do not know why, but I bristle at their comments. Everyone is entitled to their opinions, but the fact that they are speaking so bluntly in public means that they have very little worry of being overheard. I'm still not sure what the king saw in her. Well, you know what they say about ladies lacking natural beauty. Her talents must lie in other more persuasive areas. Listen, at least she has beautiful eyes, Mrs. Eyeless background characters. Get out of here, you jealous twats. She must be very persuasive indeed if the king saw it worthwhile to marry her. Y'all gross. As the two women laugh, I feel something hot begin to burn my stomach. Fiora takes in a sharp breath beside me. Since I became a maid in the palace, Ophelia has been nothing but kind to me, a mere servant. She has all the right to flaunt her status and title, yet she remains humble. I now know that this is why everyone at the palace loves her. Common women like her can only keep a man's attention for so long. I start walking toward them without thinking. Gaia, I wouldn't... You have no right to say those things about the queen. The two women are clearly surprised at my interruption. Both of them glare at me. And you have no right to eavesdrop on us. Eavesdropping? Anyone could have heard you. Their mouths fall open. One of the women looks at me for a long time, then sneers suddenly as if something has occurred to her. I thought you looked familiar. You're the crown princess's personal maid. I see you always following her around when she's in town. You know, like your job entails. This is none of your business, girl. Why do you care so much for our opinions? Perhaps it's because the girl idolizes the queen. Thinks she might also go from rags to riches. What? Oh, you do have a point. They stand and advance towards me. Do you want the prince for yourself, girl? If a commoner can become the queen, it's not too difficult to imagine yourself as a princess, is it? How foolish. You're better off dreaming smaller dreams, girl. They laugh and the irritation in my chest blazes into full-on anger. Is this what Ophelia has been dealing with for the past year? She's being treated so cruelly when she's done nothing but love the king. And I also ridiculed her just like this. Kitty, what's up? Please don't hit buttons. I forced myself to look at the cruel women as I moved my hand to the pendant hanging around my neck. I was just as cruel as them. I barely feel Viorica's hand as she rests it against my shoulder. Gaia, let it go. Her Majesty wouldn't want you to do this. But I cannot just let these women talk about Ophelia like this. I pull away from Viorica and stand firm. The Queen has a good heart. She's far more noble than either of you could ever hope to be. I think back on the times I was cruel to her. Ophelia could have easily reprimanded me for my behavior. She had the right as my stepmother, yet she has been nothing but kind to me. Ophelia never got angry at me, even despite my treatment toward her and her family. She's always treated others with kindness, even when they're cruel to her. Judging from the bitterness in your accusations, it seems like you are jealous of her. How pathetic. The other woman marches toward me, and my free hand instinctively moves to hold her hand just before her palm reaches my cheek. Ooh, being a badass. I will not tolerate any insults toward the Queen. A soft light emanates from the pendant, and I can only stare at it in shock. I got another good deed? By defending Ophelia? The woman snatches her hand away. How dare a peasant like you talk that way to us? Have you no manners? I could ask you the same. What happened to yours? How dare you? Don't you know who we are, girl? I will see you pay for your impertinence. Our words have far more weight than yours ever will. I will go to the king myself to tell him about how rude you were. I could pass on that message myself. I turn and see Rod walking toward us, his expression cold. The two noblewomen hastily curtsy. Your Highness. The noblewomen turn pale as Rod's eyes fall on them. Actually, we have an important dinner engagement. Yes, we do. Bye. The two noblewomen curtsy before quickly departing. What are you doing here without your guards? What trouble have you got yourself into now? Those women were insulting the Queen. I thought a lecture was in order. Oh, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion. What? I narrow my eyes at him. Something like this can't be helped. Bad rumors are unavoidable. Rod looks away, his expression suddenly pained. This wouldn't have happened if I had wished for... Rod never finishes the sentence. He clears his throat before looking at us again. What was he going to say? We shouldn't keep you from returning home, Viorica. I'll take Gaia back to the palace. Viorica's eyes narrow and she looks ready to say something, but Rod has already reached out for my hand to pull me along behind him. My eyes narrow as I recognize the path we're on. This is not the way back to the palace. No, it isn't. We're going to the market. Why? Because I was on my way there before I was forced to take a detour because someone was drawing attention to herself again. What? But Rod ignores me, and we walk the rest of the way to the marching in silence. Waltz is the only person in the reception room when we enter. Let me talk to my boy. Prince Rod? Princess? It's a little late for the two of you to be here. I had meant to be here earlier. Is Lady Parfait here? Waltz nods. I'll go get her. Wait here. No, come back! As soon as Waltz leaves us alone, Rod turns to me, his expression rigid. Rod steps closer and grabs my shoulders. Oh my god! Baby! I wasn't able to say so earlier because we were out in public, but you should know just how much danger you're in now. And yet, you thought it was okay to go around on your own? It was my day off today. It's not unreasonable for me to want time for myself. Time to yourself? Don't you understand the meaning of be careful? Why would you do something so foolish as going out to town alone? I cannot help but bristle at his tone. Why are you so angry? Because you're... Rod trails off and looks away. Because you're family. He said it! Now, if only we could stop romancing each other.
Take a moment of silence on that one. So are you finally acknowledging me as a family? I noticed his cheeks turning red. To be honest, you're less of a family member and more just important. Important. Because of all that you do for Emma Lane. You're important to my sister. He looks uncomfortable as he says the words, and I cannot help but marvel at his embarrassment. Why is he so embarrassed? But Rod changes the topic as he turns away from me. Why were you with Viorica? I could only think of one reason you'd speak to her. My curse. You thought you'd find out about my curse through her? I shrug. I can only assume that your curse has something to do with Viorica. I look up when Rod said something, then stare at the curious sight before me. He has taken Sebi off his shoulder and is holding the doll in his hands away from his face. The two seem to be engaged in some silent conversation. Then gently Sebi speaks words I can hear. This is the right thing to do. We need to let her help you, Rod. Rod bites down on his lower lip before briefly closing his eyes. Eventually he returns Sebi to his usual spot on his shoulder and turns to me. Fine. You're stubborn and you're not going to quit investigating unless I tell you, are you? You're right. Viorica is the reason I was cursed. Rod sits down on the settee and lets out a heavy sigh. His eyes are far away as he speaks to me. I was in love with Viorica, but I wasn't brave enough to tell her. I just followed her around like some kind of puppy. One day Viorica hadn't come home and it was raining very heavily, so I went out to look for her. I found her walking along the bank of the river. I called out to her to tell her to be careful, but I don't think she ever heard me. She slipped and... Rod swallows, clenches one of his hands into a fist. She fell into the river. I dived in after her. I somehow managed to get both of us onto the riverbank, but it didn't look like Viorica was breathing. I didn't know what to do. I started panicking. I ran off to try and find help, but I couldn't find anyone in the storm. When I returned, she was gone. I rushed to her house and a doctor was already there tending to her along with Desmond. Rod's gaze is vacant as he nods. When Viorica began to fall in love with Desmond, I felt helpless. Did you not tell her that you were the one that saved her? Why would I? Viorica was so happy believing that she and Desmond were fated to be together. I couldn't do that to her. But surely if you told her... Rod interrupts me. I want the people I love to be happy. I don't care if their happiness causes me pain. I'd rather bear that alone instead of bringing down those around me. My chest aches as I watch Rod's face. I never would have guessed that Rod would be so selfless. But that didn't stop me from thinking that I could still make her love me instead. I decided to become what I thought Viorica wanted most, the Prince Charming of the fairy tales she so adored. So I asked a witch to turn me into one. She stole my voice in exchange. Only then did I realize that she had inflicted the fairy tale curse upon me, the mermaid's curse. The next day the king turned up at our house, proclaiming that he'd been looking for my mother for years, and that he'd never stopped loving her. When the king married my mother, I became a prince. It was just as the witch promised. But it didn't matter. It didn't see it when I made the deal with the witch, but I couldn't be blind to it forever. Desmond and Viorica really do love each other. They make each other happy. Nothing I can do will ever change that. Rod,
Prince Rod? Oh!
Parfait pauses in her tracks when she sees me.
Have I interrupted something?
No. Rod moves over to Parfait, but she stops to glance at me. I won't be long. Parfait looks at Rod and then at me, her face puzzled, but she does not say a word as Rod and her leave the room. Hello, Rod. I did not get the chance to discuss Rod's curse with him later that night, nor did I get the chance to speak with Parfait and Delora about my suspicions of Sir Alcaster. Days go by, but still I find myself overwhelmed by preparations for the ball. Things become more frantic every day, making it difficult for me to have any time to speak with anyone. Eventually, I decide to write a letter containing my suspicions of Sir Alcaster. I tell Parfait and Delora that I believe he might be the witch they are looking for. I also add that I believe Fritz might somehow be involved, though my suspicions are not as well founded with him. To make matters worse, he went and disappeared. I've not heard anyone mention his name here for a very long time. I am forcefully pulled from my thoughts when I collide with someone. The linens I'd been holding scatter over the floor. Excuse me, I did not... I look up and my voice trails off when I see who I bumped into. It's Mithros! Lost in your thoughts? Sir Mithros looks at me, something veiled in his smiling eyes. I suppose those are the linens the Queen asked for? Yes, please excuse me. I begin gathering up the linens, but as I reach out for one, Sir Mithros picks it up first. Allow me to help you. I will be fine. But this was partially my fault. Let me assist you. I don't know what's happening with his voice either. I bite my lip and do not protest as Sir Mithros helps me gather the rest of the linens. I'm contemplating my schedule for the rest of the day when I realize that Sir Mithros has been talking. I don't suppose you have any idea on who that maid is? Maid? There's a cold amusement in Sir Mithros' gaze. Surely you've heard the rumor of the young prince having been seen with a royal maid somewhere around town. Rumor has it that Prince Rod has found love among the common folk, much like his royal stepfather has. Rod with a maid? As far as I'm aware, the only maid he's been out in town with has been... I freeze as Sir Mithros straightens, patting down his clothes for dust before holding out some of the linens to me. If it is true, I wish him the best, but though I wish he would be more discreet about it. A royal scandal is the last thing we need right now. I shakily take the... Look at that smug face. Smack it. Smack that face. Pull on that little coif. Just make it stop. I shakily take the linens from Sir Mithros as he inclines his head to me. Have a good day, Gaia. I walk to the dining hall in a haze, my mind whirling with the implications of what Sir Mithros just said. I'm sure it was those noble women who spread this rumor. Gaia, thank you for bringing these to me. Just leave them on the table. I curtsy after placing the linens down as commanded. If that's all. Gaia. I straighten at the tone of Ophelia's voice. When I look up, I see that her expression is carefully still. I am about to ask you something that you might not want to answer, but I very much hope you will. I will answer if I can. Good. Ophelia sighs as she sits down on one of the dining table chairs and folds her hands on her lap. I've been trying to ignore it since palace gossip is mostly false, but I can't help my curiosity. I wanted to ask about your relationship with my son. What? I understand you and Rod were out together in town a few days ago. Do you want to tell me what happened? Explain the situation, dismiss the gossip. Dismiss the gossip. I fight the urge to roll my eyes. How can Ophelia believe such nonsense? The rumors are baseless. Then Rod didn't step in to defend you from those noble women? How did she know about that? Ophelia sighs and she takes in my shocked expression. You don't need to hide anything from me, Gaia. Did you think I would be mad if the rumors were true? Regardless, a member of the royal family cannot end up with a servant. Where there's love, there's hope. Social status shouldn't stop you from being happy, Gaia. What about the fact that I'm Rod's stepsister? That nobody remembers except for me, the person playing, and sometimes Gaia. I bite down on that statement fiercely. I already know what role I am playing here, and I cannot break it. Ophelia looks at me with a complicated expression before she sighs. I will not push you on this any further. But be careful, Gaia. Your closeness with my son and daughter has not gone unnoticed. I do not believe in limiting relationships because of one's status, but I understand. I curtsy as I move toward the dining hall's entrance. What did Ophelia mean by that closeness not going unnoticed? Later that day, as I'm waiting outside the throne room for Emerlane to finish one of her classes, two maids walk toward me and stop in front of me.
Gaia, isn't it?
What is it? I've already finished all my tasks for the day.
Oh, I'm sure you have. Probably rushed through all of them so that you could hang around the prince and princess tonight. The head housekeeper keeps giving you a lighter load so you can afford the time to play around,
I blink at them, confused. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Don't play dumb. All the servants know what you've been doing. Just because you're Princess Emerlane's personal maid doesn't make you better than the rest of us. I'd be careful not to get too big for your boots, Gaia.
Are you threatening me?
What if we are? Then I'd be very disappointed in you.
Please be... Nope. There. Damn it. Then I'd be very disappointed in you.
Princess Emerlane.
Emerlane moves to stand beside me, a disapproving expression on her face. I did not expect such petty cruelty from the two of you. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
Your Highness.
You really do have a talent for getting yourself into trouble, Rod. Rod pauses briefly, his eyes meeting mine for a second before he looks at the maids. Don't you have better things to do than bullying my sister's maid?
We apologize, Your Highness. We'll be on our way.
The two maids run off. Emerlane turns to look at me. Are you okay? I'm about to answer when I notice that Rod is abruptly walking away from us. I frown at his back. He'd only just started being nice to me, and now he's back to acting as if I do not exist. What did I do? Emerlane puts her hands on my back and gently pushes me forward. You wanted to ask him something, right? I could see it in your eyes. Emerlane smiles as she pushes the door to the throne room open. I have a few more questions to ask my teacher. I'll be a while. But she disappears into the throne room before I can finish. I glance down the hallway Rod just disappeared down, and then back into the throne room. My thoughts whirl together in a vague mess until I make my decision. Wait! At the sound of my approaching footsteps, Rod turns to look at me. He scowls, but does not say anything. What the fuck, bro? Tell him off for his behavior. The words spill out of me before I can even think on them. What have I done now to make you angry with me? Nothing. He turns away and I glare as I follow closely behind him. You expect me to believe that? You can at least look at me when I'm talking to you. I reach out a hand to his elbow and pull him back so that he's facing me. Rod, but the words die in my throat when I see the expression on his face. Oh, his face is red and he refuses to look me in the eye. My surprise causes me to release him. Rod quickly turns around and begins to walk away. I'm left to stare dumbly after him. What is wrong with him? Normally he's not afraid to speak his mind. I frown as I feel a dull ache throbbing somewhere deep in my chest. What is this? Why do I feel sad? Normally Rod's distance doesn't make me feel this way. And yet now, am I really so sad that he does not want to speak with me? I shake my head and take a deep breath to still my mind. It is better not to think about it. Chapter 8. The Ball. And a great place to end this episode for today. Thanks for hanging. See you again next time. Bye-bye.